Hey, this is Connor with CongruentX, and today we're continuing our series in how to start a career in PowerApps. In this video, we're going to be working in Power Automate to do some automation. There's two requirements we're fulfilling here. Number one, whenever somebody places an order, we're going to send them a thank you. And number two, we're going to occasionally send people coupons to keep them coming in the doors. Where we left off, we have this awesome app where we can take orders and keep track of what and how much people are buying. This is great. We're selling ice cream. We're making money. Now, we got to keep these people coming back. So first, we're going to create a scheduled flow that's going to send people coupons so that they keep coming back. To start, we're going to hop into our solution and we're going to click on the Cloudflow tab, hit the Add New button, go under Automation, Cloudflow, and Scheduled. Okay, we'll give our flow a name. We'll call it Send Customers Coupon. We'll start it tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're going to have this repeat maybe once a month. We don't want to totally kill our margins here. And we'll hit Create. You'll see it started by creating our trigger step, which is a recurrence step. The interval is 1, frequency is month, so once a month. We can pick a time zone if we want. I'm going to pick Eastern. And the time formatting is a little bit different. I forgot what it's called. There's a special format you need to use here, but we're just going to use the value it already put in here. This is a solution that lets you automate a ton of different things. But the most simple way to think about it is it's like a workflow. You have a trigger, meaning something is going to start this, whether it be, like a schedule, or we're going to actively run this workflow. And then you've got actions. You've got different things that you want to do. So we have our trigger. Our new step is we want to list out all of our customers in the system. So I'm going to look for list rows, and you'll see under Microsoft Dataverse, we have list rows. This section here that I'm outlining with my mouse is different data sources. So different data sources and connectors have different actions. So the first thing we're going to do is change the name. We're going to say list active customers. We're going to choose our table, which is going to be contacts. That's where we're storing our customers. And if we open up the advanced options, you'll see there's a bunch of different stuff we can do here. We can choose which columns are going to come back. We can filter our data. We can sort. We can use Fetch XML to do the filtering and selecting. There's a bunch of different things we can do here, but we're going to keep this super simple and just return everything. So when I'm building Power Automate flows, I like to kind of take things one step at a time and just dissect what's happening. So we're going to go ahead and save this and run it so we can see what's happening. So the cool thing about this test functionality in the top right here is we can actually just run this flow whenever we want. We don't have to wait for the recurrence to happen. So I'm going to pick manually and hit test and then run flow and then done, because more pop-ups, the better, right? That was pretty quick. So our trigger worked and our list active customers worked. Now, there's a decent amount of data that returns here, so it's not going to show the data itself in the flow. Sometimes if it's a smaller amount of data, it will. What we're going to do is click the download and we can see the data here. I put this in a JSON viewer so we can see this a little bit easier. If you're using Edge, you could use something like JSON Beautifier and Editor. That's the extension I'm using here. I just copied this response into this tab. So you can see we got 16 different things. That's what we're looking at here. If we open one of these objects, you'll see this is all the data from our contact table. You can see we've got last name, the address, the first name, and more importantly, we've got their email address. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but that's a lot of data. So let's see if we can try to pare that down at all. So let's think about the things we're going to need for this. We will start by selecting the columns that we want to include in our response. Just hop into make.powerapps.com, navigate to tables and contact, and we'll go to the columns. This is a good view here because Power Automate wants what's called the schema name of the field, not the display name. So you can see here we've got the display name of our fields, but there's actually a more technical, unique name that the Power Automate flow wants. Okay, so for this coupon, we're probably gonna want their full name. So if we look for full name, you can see the schema name is just full name, easy enough. And this is not caps sensitive, so we can type it all lowercase. And really the only other thing we're gonna want is the email address. So let's look for that email. And I believe the main email field is email address 1. So we'll type that. In the select columns, just add a comma between each column you want to return. Email address 1. we only want to send coupons to people that we have email addresses for, right? There's no reason to include anyone in this if we don't have their email. So in the filter rows here, we're going to use OData style filtering, which all that means is that's the formatting of the filtering we're doing. And you can Google that and you'll find a ton of information on it. For our use case, we're going to type email address 1 NE, which stands for not equals to null. And all that's saying is we only want email addresses that are not equal to null. So let's save that and try that out. Let's see if that works. Again, I like to work in steps. Okay, let's test this guy out. We'll do manually again. Okay, let's look at our response here. This should look a little bit cleaner. Again, I'm gonna copy and paste this into my JSON editor just to make it a little bit easier to read. There's also websites that will do this for you. So now we've got 13 contacts. Let's open up one of these, and this is way easier to read. So you can see we have a lot less data coming in, which is going to speed everything up. Now that we have a list of contacts coming in, or a list of customers, we need to loop through each of those and send them an email. So there's two approaches we could do. We could either loop through each of our customers and send them an email, or we could create some kind of comma separated list and BCC them in the emails and just send one email. In this first series, we're going to keep things as simple as possible. So let's go back to edit mode. And the way that you loop over something in Power Automate is a step called apply to each. It's a little bit of a weird name, but just go with it. I like to rename it. We're gonna call it for each customer. And the first thing that this step wants is an output, right? It's expecting a list of things, and that's gonna be super easy for us. We're gonna pick the value, the list of items from our list active customer step. Then we're going to add an action. There's a few different connections we could use to send emails. We could use Gmail, we could use Outlook. In our case, we're gonna be using Outlook. So I'm gonna search for the Outlook connector. Here we go, Office 365 Outlook. And you can see there's a bunch of different actions here. I'm gonna search for send an email version 2. Is the newest version of it. What it's saying here is there's no connection. I have never created a connection to Outlook before, so I'm gonna try to do that here. Okay, so my personal environment is not enabled for Outlook Exchange, so I'm gonna use Gmail. And we'll use the default shared application. We're not gonna get into the details of that, just leave that as the default shared application. Or you can use Outlook, which will probably be a little bit easier. Okay, if you're using Gmail, it should just have you sign in and it'll create a connection and you'll be all good to go. For each customer, we're going to send an email. In the to field, we're going to hit the dynamic content button and you can see email already shows up here. So we'll click that. Okay, we're going to keep this super simple. There's a couple fancier ways you could do this, but we're just going to type in, thanks for your taste buds. Take 15% off your next purchase. Coupon attached below. So I created this whole picture in Canva to show you for this coupon. I'll bring it up here because I'm super proud of this thing. But it's a little bit more complicated to attach an image to this email. It's a little bit more complicated than you think it would be. So for this series, we're just going to keep it super simple and just give them like a discount code. In a future episode, I promise we'll go over some more complicated or complex things in this automation. Okay, we've got our code added, which is Connor 15. So let's go ahead and save and we will test this flow. It looks like everything worked. So in our loop, you can see it says show 1 of 13. That's each loop of our flow. So you can see in the first one, it sent it to someone_a example, which these are all just fake email addresses. But you can see it sent the emails. So if we go through, look at that. Okay, next on the list is whenever somebody orders something, we want to send them a thank you email. So for this flow, we want to send a thank you to our customers after they place an order. There's a couple ways we could do this. In our case, I think the easiest way is to actually send the flow directly from our app. And common theme here, there's actually multiple ways you can do this. The easiest way I find it to teach is to actually create the flow directly in the Canvas app. There's some weirdness on solutions if you create the flow outside of the app when connecting it to the app. It's a thing. So The easiest way I find is to just navigate to this Power Automate tab and create your flow here, and you shouldn't have any issues. We're just gonna create from blank. You could pick a template here if you want. The nice thing here too is once we save this, we can actually edit this directly in Power Automate. We don't have to come to the app to edit the flow. So let's give our flow a name, send thank you. You'll see it automatically added the PowerApps trigger. I want the version 2 because I like it better, mostly because you can predefine the inputs of the trigger. So the things that we want to pass to this flow. Two things I can think of are going to be the customer's name and the customer's email. So let's go full name and make sure you select the text input type. This is a typed parameter, meaning if you're using a number, you need to use a number type, etc. And we'll use email, customer's email. In the next step, we're actually going to use the Outlook connector. I know we're using Gmail before, but there are some limitations when you can use the Gmail connector and the other connections in the flow. There are definitely ways around it, but for today, to keep things simple, we're just going to shift and use the Outlook connector. And we'll look for the connector. We'll see a bunch of different actions here. We just want to send an email. And in the to field, we are going to click Add Dynamic Content. You should see email pops up under our trigger. And the subject, we'll just hard code this in and say, thanks for your order. The cool thing here is this is a rich text editor, so you can add some customizations here if you want to. For us, we're going to keep it simple. Thanks for having awesome taste buds. And we will put, let's actually change this from full name to first name. I think it might be a little weird to put the full name. And you'll notice when I click anywhere in this body or really in any of these fields, I'll get this dynamic content option. And all that means is we want to dynamically change this value, right? So we want to have, thanks for having awesome taste buds, first name. And we'll say, come back soon. Anytime you are triggering a flow from a Canvas app, you're going to need a response. And there's a step called respond to a Power App or flow. And this is so that when your app triggers the flow, it gets a response knowing, did this pass or did this fail? So we're going to hit respond. We will add an output. Again, this is typed. In our case, we're just going to use text and we'll call this output parameter status, and the value is going to be success. Now, what if this fails, right? We want a different response to come back. So what we're going to do is add a parallel branch above our response. And to make things easy, I'm going to copy and paste this action in here. And instead of success, we're going to put fail. Now, as is, because this is a parallel branch, both of these actions are going to run at the same time. And we don't want that. We want this left side to run when the email is sent successfully, and we want this right side to run when the email does not send successfully. To do that, we're going to configure the run after of this second step. So if you look at the run after of the first step, it only runs if the previous step, so our email, sending our email, is successful. In the second one, we want to change this to where it only runs if the send email has failed. I'm also going to add if it's been skipped or timed out. And you'll actually see we get a nice little red arrow that lets us know, hey, this is only going to happen when the previous step fails. Let's hit save. Okay, for me, when I saved, it didn't actually add the flow. It said there was an error. So what I did is I just hit add flow, and under my instant flow, I selected send thank you, and it added just fine. So if that happens to you, don't panic, just try it again. Okay, so to use this flow, we need to add it in some sort of button or action, right? As usual, when we're building things, I like to piece things together. So we're gonna add a button that's totally separate from everything just to get this configured. And the way this works is to call the flow, we're going to use the name of the flow, and you should see it pre-populate, send thank you, and we're going to use dot notation and use a function called run. This will automatically get created for every flow that you add, and we'll use parentheses. And if your flow doesn't have any parameters, you're done. Ours has two, right? We have the first name and email we need to send to our flow. That way the email gets sent. Now, if you remember, in our customer area, we actually have two different options. We have an option where we select an existing customer, or we're allowing the user to just type out the name of the customer and we're going to dynamically create a customer in the system if they don't exist. If we look in our submit order button, we're actually storing that contact in a variable. So either the selected one or the created one. That's in this section here. So we will use the order contact in our send thank you to make things easy. So for the first name, we're going to use order contact and use dot notation to access the first name column. We'll use a comma to notate we're inputting the second parameter, which is the email address. And again, we're going to use the order contact and use dot notation to get to the email that we are storing. Now, there's one other thing we need to do here. We only want to send or only can send this thank you if we have an email address for this customer. So we're actually going to wrap our send thank you function in an if statement. And in that if statement, we're going to check if the order contact has an email address. So we're going to say if the order contact dot email is not blank, right? So I'm using the is blank function and then throwing an exclamation point at the beginning, which reverses the output. So to look at that a different way, if we look at this code here, we have is blank order contact dot email. If the contact does not have an email, that's going to return true. I want the opposite. I want to make sure that the order contact is not blank. So this exclamation point acts as my not operator. There actually is a not function. It's potato. They do the same things. I like the exclamation point. It's easier to read to me. So if the order contact dot email is not blank, we're going to send the thank you using the order contact's first name and their email. Now let's integrate this with our submit order button, right? No reason to have this in its own button. So I just copied that code. Let's open our submit order and let's think about order of operation, right? Again, this section is what's creating our order contact variable. If we want to be able to use that order contact variable, has to come after the order contact has been created. So I'm going to paste in our code after this update context section. So just as a refresher, we are setting a variable either to the contact the user is selecting or a contact we're creating. Then if the contact has an email address, we are sending a thank you. Then we're going through all of the different order lines and we are creating purchases in the system. And remember, again, as we create different orders here, we have multiple lines. We're creating a purchase in the system for each one of those. Let's test it out. There we go. And we will submit the order. Okay, we didn't get any errors. Looked like everything worked. I'm just going to save and publish this app and we are good to go. So at this point, we've got a functional POS system. We've got automation that's going to thank our customers after they place an order, and we'll occasionally send them coupons. To wrap up this series, we're going to create some reporting that gives us an eye onto what our customers like and how we can better serve them in the future. As always, thanks so much for watching and stay tuned for the next episode. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments or reach out to us directly at congruentx.com. Thanks.